The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
This is Christine Langley with the Wyoming Women's Business Center, and I want to welcome you to Recurring Transactions in QuickBooks, the desktop version. The Wyoming Women's Business Center is a nonprofit organization that helps people who want to start or expand small businesses, specifically in the state of Wyoming. And we do that through 3 programs. The first is our business training and one-on-one counseling. The second is our access to capital through our microloan program and individual development accounts programs. And lastly, our professional artist development center. This QuickBooks training series is brought to you by our microloan program, which was started to provide access to funds for those unable to get business loans through traditional means. And so if you'd like more information on our microloan program, you can contact Waldo Smith. And now I'd like to turn it over to Derek Campbell with Capital Clarity Company for our presentation today. Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Christine. So like Christine mentioned, in this video, I want to show everybody how to create and manage recurring transactions in QuickBooks Desktop. So seeing as bookkeeping is a pretty routine process for the most part, many of the transactions you record in your QuickBooks will be repeated time and time again. QuickBooks has accounted for this and has created a feature that will hopefully help you save some time on these repeated and often monotonous transactions by creating recurring transactions. Some examples of recurring transactions might be a monthly journal entry to record depreciation expense, or a monthly invoice to a customer for recurring services at a fixed rate. You could even create a monthly bill, a recurring monthly bill for insurance or utilities that's for the same amount and is due on the same day each period. So after you get your QuickBooks company file open, you're going to create, let's start by creating a bill. So you're going to enter your bills just like you normally would. And let's do a utility bill. And it's always for $150 each month. Make sure you set up the terms and put in the expense account. Now, this is a bill that I want to repeat each month. So I'm going to come up to the top here and I'm going to click Memorize. That says Memorize Transaction, and it asks me to give a name to the Memorize transaction. So I'm going to call it City of Bayshore, and then parentheses, I want to call it Utilities. Next, I'm going to specify the type of Memorize transaction I want. So the first one just means I'm going to put it on my list, meaning it's going to be easily accessible to create this new bill whenever I need it. It doesn't necessarily have a routine auto create function. The next one is do not remind me, meaning that QuickBooks isn't going to notify you. It's just going to be available for you to create. The third one, and this is probably the most common, is automate transaction entry. So in this situation, this is the one I want to use, and I'm going to say repeat this monthly. The next date I'm going to make in January. And you can put in a number of remaining if you know there's a fixed number. I'm going to leave this blank because I plan to pay my utilities for the rest of my business's existence. And I want to have this bill entered 15 days in advance so that I can track the bill before it's due. I just click OK, and I've now created that memorized transaction. So if I close out of this, and let's not record it for now, and I come up here to Lists, and I scroll down to the memorized transaction list, you'll see the memorized transaction that I just created, the Bayshore for utilities. It's a bill, so it hits accounts payable. It's for $150 monthly, and it tells you the next date that it'll be recorded. This one right here also tells you if it's an auto record. If I need to edit this, I can edit the memorized transaction, and that allows me to edit those finer details. If I want to delete it altogether, I come down to the bottom and click this drop down arrow, and I can click delete memorized transaction. Now we can also create a memorized transaction for an invoice. Say we do the same recurring services for a certain customer each month on a monthly basis. So let's say for Adam's Candy Shop, I provide routine trimming services. And I charge them $35 a month in order to do so. So I'm going to create the invoice just as I normally would. Make sure I put in my terms here for the invoice and specify the date. And then up here on the top, I go back and I click memorize. And in this case, there's already a memorized transaction for Adams Candy Shop, so I'm going to create a new one, and I'll specify that in the name. So again, if I add it to my reminders list, QuickBooks will notify me and say, hey, it's time to create a new invoice for this client. If I say do not remind me, then QuickBooks will just add it to the list and no reminders will be given. Automate transaction entry means that QuickBooks will automatically add and create this invoice each month on a specified date. So let's go with that one for now. And I'm going to say I send this invoice monthly. I'm going to say next month. Let's say it's due at the end of the month. And I want to have it created 30 days in advance. And I know I'm only going to have this client. I only have a signed contract for another 12 months. So I'm going to put in 12 here so that in case I forget, QuickBooks won't continue to send invoices even after our contract is through. I can click OK, and I've now created that recurring invoice. I'm not going to record this transaction for now. Navigate back to the list, memorized transactions list, and there's my Adams Candy Shop new. If I double click, it'll create the invoice now. But again, I can edit the transaction from down here. If I made a mistake when I created the invoice, the best way to account for that is just to delete the memorized transaction and then start again. You can also memorize other things such as journal entries or pretty much any sort of transaction that QuickBooks can create can be memorized. But probably the most common are either invoices, sales receipts, or bills. And so with that, I want to thank you for tuning into our video, and I will pass it back over to Christine.
Thanks, Derek. So the Wyoming Women's Business Center is made possible through several partnership agencies. Our primary funding comes from the U.S. Small Business Administration and the Wyoming Business Council, but we're thankful to all of our supporters for their guidance. If you'd like more information on the Wyoming Women's Business Center, our contact information is here on the screen. And again, if you have an interest in the microloan program, please contact Waldo Smith. Thanks for joining us today, everybody.